Welcome to the Dynasty One podcast. I am your host, Carl Safchik, and today I am joined by our resident Canadian, Jesse Patterson. How you doing tonight, Jesse?
Good. Doing all right. How are you doing out in DC?
Yeah, we kind of just like have to have a Canadian. It's essentially equal rights. It's kind of like the Rooney Rule in football. We had to interview someone north of the border, and you were just the best of what we had.
Oh, I'm glad there was so much competition for the role that I was the top of the charts.
Well, we got a big show tonight. Later on, we're going to be joined by Kevin O'Brien, the FF engineer. Most of you know him from his work for DLF. He's been on this show a few times. I think he was even on a couple months ago. He's got his new podcast out. We'll talk about that a little bit. What we're going to be doing with him is going to be something a little unique to the show. In the spirit of the NHL holding its expansion draft, those of you who watch the NHL or pay attention to it, there's going to be an expansion team, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, and they are picking players from each NHL roster, but the NHL teams currently in existence get to protect most of those players. So in the spirit of that, we're going to be doing a startup draft in which we cannot draft any players from the top 10 rounds. Now, we don't have to build a team in the first two rounds. We're going to be taking best player available for the most part, but there may be a little bit of interesting ways we go about this because we might be shooting for upside. Maybe you might not want to be able to compete in year one, knowing that these other teams have already built around that. So it'll be fun. But before we do that, we have a little bit of news and notes, a couple Dynasty Twins. Is it a couple Dynasty Twins? I guess it's a couple sets of Dynasty Twins.
Two pairs
you
of twins.
Can't have a foursome twins. Yeah, two pairs of twins. There you go. All right, well, the big news of the week, obviously, is the Tennessee Titans and wide receiver Eric Decker have agreed to a one-year deal. Jesse, how do you view Decker as a dynasty option at this point, and what does this mean for the Titans' offense as a whole in the short term?
I think it's a great landing spot for Decker's value. I know Eric Carter's a big Decker fan. He always kind of has been. I think just because he's an older player.
Is that a jab?
And no, he likes older players, and he's always liked Decker. So, It's...
Okay. Well, no, if you remember correctly, he didn't always like Decker. It took until we finally hung out the last year when James Simpson came up. Go now. Man, it seems like it was almost 2 years ago now. James Simpson came in from DLF, came and stayed with me and watched a game. And when James came up, Eric met us out, and Eric had been slamming against Eric Decker for years. This was a while ago, though. And when we finally hung out, one of the first things he said to me, we sat down at the bar. He said, "I just want to let you know I've been holding this in a long time, but Eric Decker is actually really good."
I'm glad he finally came around. It took him long enough. Decker's been a pretty consistent fantasy guy for a while. Like I said, I still like him, and I know he still has some value. As far as his landing with Tennessee, I think that's great for a lot of guys there. It's going to open up the middle of the field for Mariota to throw to. I know they have Delaney Walker, and he's still there, but getting older. It takes some pressure away from the outside, which is where Corey Davis and Rashard Matthews are going to be. I just think it improves that team as a whole. I think it's a great fit. The only guy I really see it kind of hurting as far as dynasty value would be someone like Taywan Taylor. I kind of tweeted this out that Taylor's value takes a hit in year one, but Decker's only on a 1-year contract. So if that makes him a little cheaper, I'm still buying.
Yeah, Taywan Taylor could have competed for the slot role this year. That's obviously not going to happen as long as Decker stays healthy. I think the other player it hurts is Delaney Walker, because a lot of Delaney Walker's work came in the slot and up the seam, and he's getting older. I'd rather have Taywan Taylor at his cost now than I would have had Delaney Walker at his cost, because we weren't going to expect a lot out of Taylor in the first place, but you probably did expect a lot out of Delaney Walker. And I think this also hurts Jonnu Smith, because he was going to be that move tight end. Now there might not be as many 2 tight end sets. I think this just obviously helps Mariota. I mean, he has an embarrassment of riches on the offense now.
Oh yeah, and I mean that line is still above average. They got a great running game. I see a lot of people on Twitter talking about how, oh, poor, good thing I didn't do my rookie draft yet. Now I'm not taking Corey Davis 101. I still think Corey Davis is definitely the 101 in a dynasty rookie draft. I mean, he's going to be playing outside. Decker will actually be drawing a little bit of attention away from him. I think this is actually beneficial for him more than it's a detriment to him.
Yeah, our friend Leo Pasiga said on Twitter that he thinks that the veteran presence will help Corey Davis. And yeah, this does absolutely nothing for me for dynasty value. If you're selecting a player at the 101, you're selecting him because you think he has 6-7 years worth of value. Hopefully, I mean, fingers crossed, right? But that's why you would select a player at 101.
Absolutely.
Eric Decker signing, that doesn't mean anything, and they're really not playing the same position. I mean, maybe there are some 2 wide receiver sets where it's Decker and Matthews. I think for the most part, it would probably be Davis and Decker. I know Decker is going to play some slot, but I think he's automatically the best wide receiver on that team at the moment. I don't think Davis is better than him at the moment.
No, but like you said, he could learn from having that veteran there.
Absolutely.
What do you think of someone like a Tajay Sharp? Is he just dead now in the water?
Is Tajay Sharp the one that got in the fight at the bar?
I don't know.
I believe it was Tajay Sharp after they drafted Corey Davis, and I think it was like draft night. And then somebody was like making fun of him, like, "Yeah, you're not going to get any playing time now." And he called it an assault.
That sounds about right.
And he called it an assault charge.
Well done. Way to seal the deal.
Yeah, exactly. It pretty much made it easy for the team to cut ties with him now. Yeah, so I think the writing was on the wall for him. But so I guess I didn't think about this until I started talking about it. What do you think 2 wide receiver sets look like this year? Do you think it's Davis and Decker, or do you think Matthews gets to play in some of the 2 wide receiver sets?
I think it all depends on how the game flow is going. I mean, Matthews really started coming on at the end of the year, but that was more at the expense of Sharp than anything else. And Davis was obviously not an option at that point. Neither was Decker. So I don't know. I think it's all going to depend on how Davis comes out of the gate, if he learns the system well, if him and Mariota get some rapport going early on. I mean, they've drafted him to be their number 1, obviously, for now and the future. So I think they're going to try to give him every opportunity to take that number 1 job. So it'd be him and Decker, I'd assume, in 2 wide receiver sets.
I would think Decker is in on like 80% of 2 wide receiver sets. I would say Davis is in on like 60%. And then I don't know what percents I need to come up with. What is it, like 166% if you're projecting 3 guys into 100? So Decker's like 85, Davis is like 60, and Matthews is like 50.
That seems about right. Like I said, it's all going to depend on how quickly Davis picks things up. So, I mean, if they're a competitive team, like I think they're going to be, then they're going to do what's best for the team. And if that's Matthews, then
Right. Absolutely. I agree with that. Moving on, Bob Quinn, Detroit Lions general manager, says he's, quote, confident the team and quarterback Matt Stafford will reach an agreement on a long-term deal. Let's just work on the assumption that Stafford is the Lions quarterback for the long term. What do you expect out of this offense in the near future? And hold back a little bit, because I think Marvin Jones might be in our Dynasty Twins. So you could talk about him a little bit, but we'll save some too.
Well, I think with Calvin Johnson retiring, they've kind of changed the way they run their offense. Obviously, Theo Riddick is theoretically a part of their passing game now, so they're more of a short passing, like quick hitting kind of offense. Last year they were 11th in the league in pass attempts per game. So they're kind of a volume based passing team now, and I think that's going to help someone like Stafford. I mean, I remember for years when he'd just he'd force it to Megatron. And luckily, Megatron was amazing and was able to catch a lot of them. But, he made some pretty boneheaded throws there. Dialing it back and making it more like a short passing, kind of a quick hitting offense, I think that's going to benefit Stafford and prolong his value in dynasty leagues, his career in dynasty leagues as well. Yeah,
and I think the one player, and I hate to say this because I've railed on him for so long, I think the one player that has benefited this entire offseason is Eric Ebron, because they've really not brought in much in the competition for pass catchers. I mean, Anquan Bolden's still out there. He wants to sign before camp. I think probably Detroit is his most likely landing spot, but I don't think that that really negatively affects anybody on the team too much. I'm really starting to come around on Marvin Jones. Before he got hurt last year, he was a really good option. We're going to talk about him and ADP twins. Golden Tate is just severely underrated every year. And you mentioned it. There's just going to be a ton of volume. That's just how they've always been. Stafford has always benefited from volume. He never was the uber efficient quarterback. Actually, I think last year was his most efficient year at quarterback. So maybe that light's coming on. But they just didn't really do too much in terms of adding a premier pass catcher for that team.
No, I think they're comfortable with Golden Tate and Marvin Jones kind of playing that 1A, 1B role. So, if they continue to play like that, and last year Stafford was QB7, I think that he can keep that going for at least a couple more years. Kind of, become like a Phillip Rivers veteran in a couple of years, the kind of guy you draft late and just kind of plug him in and, I'm fine at quarterback.
So this isn't an ADP twin, but it's definitely an argument I've gotten into a few times over the past couple of years. And it's, who would you rather have, Matt Stafford or Kirk Cousins?
Oof. Right now I'd pick Stafford just because, I know where he's going to be next year.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's looking for that long-term deal too. We know where both of these players are going to be next year. We don't know where they're going to be the year after that. Do you think that there's more of a likelihood that Stafford's there long-term? I guess that's probably where you what you were getting
because at. Because you get drafted by the team and he's been their franchise QB for so long. I have a feeling that they're gonna try to make something work there. I mean, you've seen how many teams have swung and missed trying to find that franchise QB for so long that I got to assume that Detroit's going to do whatever they can to get Stafford signed long term.
Yeah, I would still rather have Cousins, but Stafford showed me a lot last year. I've been probably known to be, to a fault, more concerned with efficiency from the quarterback position than I am with just overall raw numbers. I've seen a couple studies that would say that maybe I'm taking my efficiency bias, I guess you could say, a little bit too far. But up until this past year, Matt Stafford has been a pretty damn inefficient quarterback. Outside of that 1 year where I think he threw like 5 interceptions, he was really great. But did he ever have a year like that? Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass. So, but Matt Stafford did show me a lot last year, and I think he's creeping on what that tier, that third tier where I would consider Kirk Cousins. All right, well, no, go ahead.
Well, like I said, I think he's been forced to alter his game with Calvin Johnson's retirement, Golden Tate, the personnel that he has around him, that he's becoming more of a, I don't want to say like just a short yardage pass, because he's got a pretty good long ball, but like Sam Bradford and guys like that who just they play with what they've got and they make the most of the situation.
So he never had a year with 4 interceptions. I guess the year I was thinking of was when he went 41-16. But he has a career percentage at 61.5 completion percentage, which is well under the last 2 seasons he's had. And he's improved on his QB ranking or on his QBR each of the last couple seasons. So he's done a lot better. He's even improved his rushing stats each of the past 4 years, believe it or not. Added 2 ground touchdowns this past year. All right, well, moving on to the great up north, close to where you're from, the Minnesota Vikings first-round pick Laquan Treadwell is running exclusively as the team's 3rd wide receiver. And actually, considering what transpired during his rookie year, this can be viewed as a promotion. What are your level of expectations for Treadwell and the rest of the Vikings offense?
I mean, as I'm a self-admitted Vikings fan / Vikings hater. The 3rd wide receiver role in Minnesota is, not going to be that fantasy viable, I don't think. Between Diggs, Thielen, and Rudolph, and then I'm going to assume that they get Jerick McKinnon involved in some passing down work type of thing there. I don't know that it's going to be enough volume to sustain him, in terms of fantasy relevance this year, but you have to see that as a positive. I mean, the guy caught 1 ball last year after being a first-round pick. So, that's definitely showing that he's at least getting his head, in the game properly.
One less ball than the guy drafted ahead of him, the wide receiver drafted ahead of him.
That's true.
right ahead of him.
If anything, I mean, this shows that he's at least improving a little bit. So people who have kind of hung on to him after picking him high in rookie drafts last year, I was one of those, unfortunately. You can maybe see a turnaround a little bit. You can see a little bit of value creeping back into him, because at this point, a couple of months ago, you couldn't give the guy away for anything. So it's definitely, any positive news here is a bonus to Treadwell owners.
If you were drafting redraft, obviously this isn't a redraft podcast. If you were drafting in redraft, would Laquan Treadwell be the third wide receiver on the Vikings you would be drafting?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Thielen would obviously be ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Thielen just proved last year that he's he can play at the NFL level, and he's got that rapport with Bradford now. So
Thielen was really, really good last year. I think underrated to a point. I'm in one league, the Capitalist Pigs League, where there's 2 copies of every player. I tried to trade for him with both owners. Tried to trade Deshaun Jackson for Adam Thielen plus to Nathan Powell, and he said he wouldn't even trade Adam Thielen to me straight up for Deshaun Jackson.
He was a waiver wire hero for a lot of guys. I think I owned him in almost every league I was in, just because I got in early, because, like I said, I'm a Vikings fan, so I kind of saw him coming up when Cordero Patterson was struggling and Charles Johnson was struggling, and I said, somebody's got to catch passes there. So I picked up Thielen in almost every league I was in, and it paid off. So
you mentioned Kyle Rudolph. What about Bucky Hodges? Are you a fan of his?
I mean, Minnesota has such a hard time developing tight ends. I don't see immediate value, especially coming off the year that Rudolph finally had last year. I just think that he's going to be the man there at the tight end, especially from a pass catching standpoint. But I mean, they took a chance on him. They have no depth behind Rudolph whatsoever, so they've got to start developing somebody for the down the road. So I can see him having some value in dynasty leagues. I'd maybe taxi squad this year, but.
Yeah, I would say probably at least starting off on the taxi squad, a lot of dynasty rosters. Is a lot of what Kyle Rudolph did last year just pretty much target based, and the fact that he found his way into the end zone 7 times? I mean, his yards per target is well under anybody in the top 12.
Oh yeah, I mean, he was targeted. Here, let me look it up. 132 times last year.
Yeah.
That's pretty high. I mean, Diggs was only targeted 112, so he was the most heavily targeted guy in the team. But I think a lot of that had to do with situation as well. I mean, the offensive line, I probably could have played offensive line for them last year. They're pretty terrible. So Sam Bradford is kind of under siege every single time you get the ball. You just kind of huck it out and hope somebody will catch it. Rudolph happened to be the guy closer than anybody else.
Yeah, that's why I'm sitting here thinking that Rudolph probably is the same guy he was 2 years ago. He just got an amazing situation. For those who saw that ahead of time, obviously got a great year out of him. I still think that there's a chance that Bucky Hodges, not in year 1, but I think there's a chance that he ends up being the better tight end down the road, maybe in 2018, and maybe we see flashes at the end of the year this year.
I could see something like that happening. Another thing too is Rudolph coming off that year and being primed for kind of a letdown this year. Maybe a good time for people to sell if they have him.
Absolutely. And then just while we're on the team, what are you hearing about Teddy Bridgewater? There's a little bit of news out there about him. What are your expectations with him? And even if he does get healthy, do you think he'll get playing time?
I think Sam Bradford would have to either get hurt or collapse for him to take the job back from him at this point. I mean, the team is being really positive, but at the same time kind of hesitant to give any firm dates or firm recovery timelines on him. So I think they're still kind of in a wait and see mode. They didn't pick up his options, so if he shows anything this year, I assume they'll try to re-sign him and get him back in there. But I think Bradford's got that job for now, and it would take something for like an injury or something like that for Teddy to get back in there and to be the starter.
I'm such a huge Teddy Bridgewater fan. So I just looked this up. In 2018, the Vikings would save $6 million by cutting Kyle Rudolph. They'd only have 1.3 in dead cap. So if he doesn't do something similar to what he did last year, maybe not as many targets, but still find the end zone 5 to 7 times, get 800 yards, and Bucky Hodges shows anything, I think Bucky Hodges can be the starter in 2018.
Could be a good late rookie draft steal there, stash.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so let's do a little bit of Dynasty Twins. Right off the bat, we mentioned Marvin Jones earlier. He and Bilal Powell are identical Dynasty Twins at 120.5. And ironically, Marvin Jones, you know what? We're going to have to see. I actually didn't intend this, but technically they're both going in the 11th round, but Marvin Jones is the 120th player listed. So we'll ask Kevin if we can include these two players in our mock draft. Who would you rather between those two?
I got to go Marvin Jones here. I mean, like you said, early in the season last year, he was really showing that he could be that, 1A, 1B with Golden Tate. The way the Lions are running their offense, like we talked about earlier, they're going to be that high volume, quick hitter kind of thing, and that's where Marvin Jones shines. So, as much positive press as Bilal Powell is getting right now, and I think I read a blurb the other day that someone said he could be a Pro Bowler if he ever got the chance to be a feature back. I still think I go with Marvin Jones here.
Yeah, me too. And actually, Marvin Jones, I'll just give you a sneak peek, and I'll probably go third in our rookie draft. And obviously, Kevin isn't able to hear this, but if we do deem these two players to be eligible, I think Marvin Jones is the easy 101 in this dispersal draft we're going to do. All right, we got time for one more Dynasty Twins. Martavis Bryant and Devontae Parker. And I find this very interesting because I think both have similar upside, similar risk. They have similar situations where they're sharing the ball. Which one of those would you prefer?
This is a tough one, actually. I'm really on the fence between these two guys. I'd probably go Bryant here. Everything that's been coming out and that people are saying about him, and he's, the coaches and everybody, he's really turned himself around. Ben was out the other day just saying that, he looks like a completely different player, and Pittsburgh's really struggled to find that second receiving weapon without Bryant in the lineup. Sammy Coates was, couldn't catch a cold. Eli Rogers was up and down. Who's the other guy they had there?
Oh God, I'm struggling for his name too because he was so horrible. And
Marcus Wheaton.
Yep, Marcus Wheaton. We got it together. Look, we're in sync here.
There we go. They obviously let him go because he just he was hot garbage. So I think Bryant has a really good opportunity to be the wide receiver too there, and that's definitely going to be a very high powered offense. Pittsburgh's always going to be a top scoring team. Ben's going to miss a couple of games because that's just what happens with Ben. But I think Bryant has a clearer path to targets than Parker does. Parker's got to compete with your boy Jarvis Landry. They're going to be more of a run-heavy team with Ajayi there. They re-signed Kenny Stills. They got in Julius Thomas. So I think Parker is going to be a little cloudier to get targets. If I'm picking someone in 51 to be fifth round, I guess, fourth round. If I'm picking someone around there, I'm probably going with the more surefire guy in Bryant.
Yeah, early fifth round. Surefire is tough to say around Martavis Bryant because you have the suspension thing looming. You have Ben Roethlisberger probably going to retire at the end of the season. I think once you start thinking about it, it's right around the corner, and he's mentioned it the past couple years. So we could be looking at a Pittsburgh Steelers team in 2018 without Ben Roethlisberger. And you mentioned that Parker's competing for targets, but the Steelers have obviously Antonio Brown, who was one of the leaders in targets in the NFL, and Le'Veon Bell, who was one of the leaders in targets from the running back position. So while the Steelers obviously do pass the ball more and just have a more prolific offense, I think the sharing for targets thing is maybe overblown between the two. The Miami coaching staff, now, this is tough to say. We had Ray Summerlin on. I can't remember if it was on air or not, and I hope I'm not saying anything I shouldn't. But Ray said that the Roto World staff has a ongoing joke about how many 2017 Dolphins are going to be in the Hall of Fame because the offensive coordinator is just currently pumping up every single player on that team. But hey, maybe they all deserve getting pumped up.
I heard that. I guess their training camps are going really, really well, and the punter's going to the Hall of Fame apparently.
Yeah. So I mean, on one hand, if you have a coach like berating their players or saying like this guy really needs to work and this guy really needs to get in shape, and you have another coach saying everybody's doing great, are you really talking about two different offenses, or are you just talking about two different coaches?
Two different management styles, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So you never know. I mean, things could be going great there. There's been a lot of hype about Devontae Parker, though, and he's a guy that I really liked coming out of college. I don't know. Obviously, my opinion of players changes not only about what they do on the field and off the field, but it also has a lot to do with what their price is. When Devontae Parker was being drafted, he was being considered. He was my 102 at the time behind, my 103 behind Cooper and Gurley. He was my second favorite wide receiver behind Cooper, and obviously I had White a little bit lower. But when he got injured early in mini camps, people were letting him fall as low as 109, and I thought that was crazy. And then he showed a couple highlight catches throughout the season, and he got bumped up to like the low second round, early third round in dynasty startups. And then I also thought that was crazy, even though I really liked the guy. It was like, oh, he was a 8th round startup pick to you, and then he made a couple highlight catches and he goes up that far. He's a guy that's capable of highlight catches, but he's also capable of much more, which I haven't seen consistently yet. But I do think he does possess superstar ability. It's just the consistency that he doesn't possess. Once he puts that all together, I think he could be a complete package. Now, I'm just not as confident that he will put it all together as some of the other people, but I'll still take him very slightly over Martavis Bryant. And I agree with you that is a tough one to pick between those two.
Yeah, there's definitely a reason these guys are so close in ADP. Oh, they're identical in ADP.
Okay. All right, well, cool. On the other side, we're going to be joined by Kevin O'Brien to do this weird expansion 2-round startup mock. All right, cool. I really didn't even think of that, because when I was looking at the like, all right, I'm thinking, okay, I can't use the top 120 players. Well, technically, number 119, Marvin Jones, isn't going 120th. He's going after 120th. So.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think he's being underdrafted by a lot right now. So hypothetically, if we're letting him be there, he'd be my clear 101.
Oh yeah, that's huge value right there. You could be getting, high-end wide receiver 2 value in the 10th round.
Yeah.
And I mean, you build teams like I do. You probably have. He'd be like your wide receiver 5 by that point or something, right?
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Dude, you should see my Capitalist Pigs team. My wide receiver 4 is Demaryius Thomas.
Holy crap!
Yeah,
I'd take that all day.
I have OBJ, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, Demaryius Thomas, and then I have a bunch of guys that are like actual wide receiver 4 or 5s, like Deshaun Jackson. Yeah, Deshaun Jackson, Rashad Perriman.
Well, Keenan Allen, I don't know. I mean, I've been reading that he's not that good. So,
dude, your boy, what is his name? Andy?
Yeah.
So I obviously, I don't know if we should talk about this. So while it's live, just because Jason always messes up. Hi, Jason. But so Nick Whalen quote tweeted me, basically saying why I was wrong about Keenan Allen, and then your boy liked his quote tweet.
Of course. We went out and had a couple of beers last week, and he admitted he's like I'm kind of jealous that you get into the the podcasting and all that kind of stuff, but he's like, it seems like it's a lot of work for the writing side of it, and I'm too lazy for that, so I never would have got my opportunity anyways. Like, it's not that much work, but all right, that's fair enough. But like I said, at least he admitted that he's kind of jealous of it.
Right, so. Right. But what's funny is like, just okay, well, be nice to everybody, and then try to. Like, it's not hard. Like,
no, it's not. Yeah.
And we're welcoming as many people as. Not even just Dynasty One, but like the whole community is welcoming of anybody who wants to try. So
definitely.
For one, I don't see any reason to be jealous because it's not something you can't do. And for two, I don't see any reason to be jealous because like it's your friend that's doing it. So
yeah. But he said he was happy. He's just like I said, he's like, right. Oh, I kind of wish that was me. I got the break or whatever. I'm like, well, right. You still can. Like Jake's still looking for writers, really.
Right. What's up, dude?
Hey, man. How's it going?
Rocking the DLF.
DLF.
Yeah, I have that same T-shirt.
Let's do it.
Me too. So I ran into a question while we were talking about something else, not even to do with the mock. So technically, Marvin Jones and Bilal Powell are 120 and 121. So Marvin Jones is actually being drafted at 120.5. Actually, both of them are. So I think both of those players should be available.
I don't want Marvin Jones anyway.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Well, I know he's going to go before me now.
I'm going to snag him on you now.
I cut it off of I cut it off at Paul, but
I did too originally, and then we did Dynasty Twins, and they were like not even I didn't even use that cutoff on purpose. And I'm like, oh, they're both 120.5. So technically neither one of them are going in the top 10 rounds.
That's funny.
All right.
Hey,
so,
Jesse, I never met you, man. I'm Kevin. Good to talk.
Kevin, nice. I think we've talked a couple of times on Twitter about a couple of things.
Yeah.
I've been listening to your podcast lately. I love that thing. That's great.
Thanks, man.
I didn't even know. I haven't listened to the past couple episodes. I have them all downloaded, but I didn't know you were going for as long as you were on some of these recent ones.
So Evan got a little off track.
That's what I've been listening to. I was telling Carl before we got you on there, Kevin. I try to listen to him in my car on the way to work and the way back, and this is my second day, and I'm still listening to Evan talking. I'm like, is this the same show? Like, are they still? Like, but it doesn't seem that long because when Evan talks, it's just like, wow, this is great.
Yeah, it's 2 hours. There's no nonsense. We didn't like shoot the shit or anything. It was just I had a lot of questions, and he went long on his answers, and I let it run. I mean,
it was good stuff.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He just really, because I mean, he's probably out of all of the fantasy football community. I mean, he's right up there at the top, and he just makes time for everybody. I think it's just awesome.
It's crazy. Yeah. So, but my target's an hour. I recorded Scott Fish last night. He was an hour, and then Bloom was a little over, maybe hour and 20, hour and 15. But generally, I try to keep it to an hour.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably have you on for like 20, 25 minutes or so.
Yeah, that's your normal. You guys usually do half and half, right?
Yeah. All right. As long as everybody's ready.
I've been listening to your podcast now, Carl, like fucking over and over and over. Like a groupie.
Really?
I'm a groupie, man. Seriously, I binge. I do this with a few shows that I really love, like West Wing and stuff. I watch like season 1 through 5, and then I start over at 1 through 5, and I go back.
Right.
So like the old DLF pods, I do the same. I go back as far as I can, and then I go up, and then I go back down, and I go back up. And I always hear something.
There's got to be so much cool. Yeah, there's got to be so much cool stuff that it's like, oh, he was way off on that one, or wow, he really hit the nail on the head on that one. And like, it's kind of funny because no one ever goes back and is like, see, you were wrong, which I would be fine with, or man, you really got it there. All they know is what's in the very present. And if your opinion sounds very stupid at the time, then they agree with you. And if it's like completely in line with groupthink, then they're like, oh yeah, you're totally right.
I've come across both. So generally the thing that I liked about when it was you, Jarrett, and Eric is that the thought process really helps. So what was the frame of mind that we were in 3 years ago? Right. And how do we backdate that to apply now? Right. So like I have this kind of like pseudo thing that I think Jordan Howard could be the next Jeremy Hill.
Wow.
And the way we talk about Jordan Howard was very similar to the way we talked about Hill. Hill was like top 3 pick. Everyone was going after him. I probably had him pretty high in my ranks. And the way we were talking about him was he was the next Freeman. He was the next emerging star. And it's very similar to the way we talk about Jordan Howard.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, let's jump into this. I need to go get dinner after this, so we're going to try to go to like 8:25. All right, now we're joined by. Oh, hold on. What did I have? I had something funny I was going to say about you.
That's not good.
Oh, I remember what it is. Okay. All right, now we are joined by the Keenan Allen of the Twitter sphere, and that's Kevin O'Brien. How you doing tonight, Kevin?
How you doing, Carl? That's quite the way to come in, man.
Yeah, you're just perennially underrated. People find reasons to not listen to your show, but it sounds like more people are finding reasons to listen to your show recently. The Fantasy Football Engineering podcast has been doing quite well recently. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, man, the pod's been great. So I started out on my own, kind of what the heck, let's give it a try. I've listened to a ton of podcasts myself. I just said, why can't I do that kind of thing? So I started out pretty slow, doing some draft coverage topics. Had Joe Marino on, AFE to NFC, Justin Higdon on, really draft focused. That's when I got started, was that draft time in April. But the last couple episodes, I've had Evan Silva, who is great, 2-hour long episode. It's a bit of a marathon. Break it up into sections if you need to. Ran long. And then Sigmund Bloom was this week, and I just recorded with Scott Fish.
Awesome. Well, that you sound like a third rounder out of Cal who just is producing, just steady producing relevant numbers. All right. So we teased this a little bit earlier. We're going to be doing a 2-round mock draft in the spirit of the Las Vegas Golden Knights, who are the expansion team in the NHL. They're basically doing a dispersal draft by themselves, where the NHL protects a bunch of players on their team. So the premise is you're joining a new league, you're an expansion team. There's 12 different teams with 10 different players, or 10 different teams with 12 different players. So 120, but in this case, 119 players are kept. We'll start it at anybody who has a ADP at DLF over 120, and you get the first pick, Kevin. Who are you going to pick?
Bilal Powell, piece of cake. Right at 121. He's the closest one available. Gives me RB2 with maybe a top 15 type production coming up with Forte fading out there. Really didn't draft anyone behind them. I think Elijah McGuire is there, but I don't really see him as a full-time back. And although Paul's getting up there in age, everyone thinks he's young and ready to rise, but I think he's up there at 27 already. So, but anyway, at this point in the draft, we're just getting past the 10-round mark. I think Bilal Powell can be a pretty good, second RB flex play. Hopefully he's your RB3 or RB4 in your roster.
All right. And Jesse, I'm going to give you the number 2. I think I know where you're going to go with this.
I'm going to snipe your guy on you. Another thing about Powell, I just wanted to kind of add on to that is that, the Jets are going to be awful this year. No, there's no doubt about that. But he's been, kind of proven as a pass catching back before. So if we're in a PPR format here, even if they're down by a ton, which they most likely will be, at least he's still going to be catching passes, getting you points there. So I like that pick, actually. I'm going to go with the other guy that has a similar ADP to him, and I'm going to pick Marvin Jones. I just think that the Lions offense, like we talked about earlier in the show, is going to put up some numbers, and Marvin Jones is going to be the 1B to Golden Tate's 1A, assuming they can both stay healthy. I think the upside is there for him to be a high-end WR2 on my roster.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about him already. I would agree. Marvin Jones would have been my 101. Right now, I kind of lucked into this pick, even though, like I said, I like Marvin Jones. But Chris Godwin's pretty perfect for the scenario in that we're looking for upside. We're looking for a player who's young, because you're not going to perform. You're probably not going to make the playoffs in this scenario right away. So he's a player that I'd be more than comfortable to build around. And in this hypothetical, I would be surprised that a team didn't choose to tag him. And I guess in that way, I'm surprised that he's not in the top 120. Kevin?
I think Godwin's pretty good. It's pretty crowded there. You kind of banking on maybe Djax falls off a little bit quicker than sooner than later, if you will. But people have been counting out Djax for a long time now. So, yeah, Godwin's a pretty good pick. Young offense. Winston will be there to support him for a while. Rising offense. OJ Howard. Jets are taking off. Basically, all systems go, I guess, on the Bucs offense. People are buying in pretty hard. I think Godwin was a streaky player in college. I wasn't really big on him in the draft season. But yeah, he's a pretty good pick, good prospect at this point in the draft.
All right, and you're up.
So a couple choices here. Duke Johnson, I don't really like him. I think I'm going to go with Kyle Rudolph. I think Kyle Rudolph at tight end can give me 200 PPR points floor at my tight end. With the there's not many wide receivers at this point in the draft where I really want to reach for those. I think there's a good cluster of running backs left, and I think Kyle Rudolph. I think he finished tight end top 5 at least last year.
Tight end too. We were just talking about
it. Gives you a pretty good floor there for stability on a starter.
Just don't listen to the first half of the show, Kevin.
Yeah, we kind of hated on Rudolph a little bit earlier.
That's okay. You guys can hate on players.
Yeah, there you go. With you passing on him, I'm going to go with Duke Johnson here. Same thing, young, improving offense. He's a pass catcher, although he hasn't really proven much so far. I know there's a lot of hype on Crowell right now. I still think that, with that Cleveland team kind of starting to come together, I think Duke Johnson's going to have a role there. And he can definitely be, a back-end PPR running back 3 or 2 if things fall right.
So I think one thing people don't realize is he played 16 games and still finishes RB 40, and Corolla actually out-targeted him the second half of the season. So he's not even getting the targets that I think people expected, and didn't produce very well at all. And with every opportunity, they should have been throwing him the ball and exercising it in space, and they just didn't do it. I'm kind of curious why they didn't use him more in that role. So not to say there's not progression coming, but that offense I think is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I was really curious about that too. I think the offense is going to be better as a whole, and I think Duke Johnson should be more involved, but I don't like to outsmart coaches, so I do wonder why he wasn't involved. I really like Duke Johnson as a player, but so I'm on one side, I'm totally with Jesse because just Duke Johnson maybe on another team would be great. But why they didn't use him more last year, I'm a little bit worried about. I'm going to continue with drafting young guys. Austin Hooper, I think, has all the tools to be a great NFL tight end. He's in an offense that can feature that can feature the tight end pretty heavily. I mean, they have Julio Jones there. People like to talk about Taylor Gabriel. Mohamed Sanu filled in nicely. We know that the tight end position takes time to develop. I think that Austin Hooper can jump in there and put up 1,000 yards, not this season maybe, but next season he could be 1,000-yard tight end. So I'll get him now in hopes that he develops in the future.
Sorry, Kevin. Yeah. I was just going to say I just wrote an article and submitted it in for Dynasty One where I called Hooper one of my flag players for the year. So
nice.
My love for him is going to be published pretty soon.
Awesome.
I'll triple down. I like Cooper a lot. I liked him last year. I wrote up for DynastyLeagueFootball.com. I wrote up a SWOT. We do the strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats. I did it just after he was drafted last year. And obviously, Tammy was the biggest threat for him. And I think with Tammy not coming back, Hooper is in line to get some targets. And they don't have a wide receiver 2 there either.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sanu really didn't do anything to prove he's the second weapon in that offense yet.
I think he played well. I think there's no like superstar. I'm going to demand 95 targets from Sanu. I think he's a perfect complement at 2. He's nobody that's going to suck targets away from somebody who's an ascending talent.
Absolutely.
All right, you're up, Kevin.
Yeah. So there's wide receivers are in this range are pretty hard to come by. So a young guy that I like kind of emerged the second half of the year last year is Marquise Lee. I think, people forget he was actually drafted by the same team ahead of Allen Robinson, and Allen Robinson soared past him early on. But Marquise Lee, still 25 years old, had some nagging injuries to start off his career. Looked like he put it together. Second half of last year, he finished as wide receiver 24. So week 9 on, good production. Had a click with Bortles, and I think he's a solid option there. Could be, this late in the draft. I mean, you're looking at top 30, top 36 production, and that's a steal.
Yeah, Marquise Lee is a favorite among the Dynasty One team. Our Jake Gell wrote an article just talking a lot about how Marquise Lee is a buy right now. And if you haven't checked it out on DynastyOneFantasy.com, please go do so. There's definitely a compelling argument. And he was one of my targets here, so I'm kind of sad to see him go off the board so early. But Jesse, you're up with the 8th pick.
Yeah, same thing. Kevin actually snagged my pick there. I was eyeballing Marquise Lee at the same time. I'm going to go a little young here. I'm going to go with James Conner, the running back that Pittsburgh just took. Obviously, Le'Veon Bell is a stud. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But he is, one bong hit away from being suspended again. Pittsburgh's shown that the second running back in that system, when Bell isn't around, can definitely be beneficial. Beneficial and fantasy viable. And I think they picked Connor, with the envisioning him being like a backup to Bell that can step in and contribute in the event that Bell either gets hurt or suspended or whatever happens there.
And we know that the backup will get play in Pittsburgh, even if Bell is healthy. I mean, we saw D'Angelo Williams get some play. I'm going to go young running back 2. I'm going to go more based on situation than talent, and that's Marlon Mack. If Frank Gore ever ages, which I have predicted will happen sometime soon, there's going to be somebody that needs to step into that role in a young, great offense with the Indianapolis Colts that we figure to see a ton of snaps. Marlon Mack can be fantasy relevant right off the bat, and he's young at 21 years old. I think that when you're sort of throwing darts here, I mean, Marquise Lee, Kyle Rudolph, Marvin Jones, Bilal Powell, I don't think those are dart throws. I think those are good picks that maybe their upside isn't huge, but you're getting probably a good asset. With Marlon Mack, I admit it's a little bit of a dart throw, but there is a little bit of reasoning behind it. There's a little bit of method to my madness. I'll take a player who has the opportunity to fill a role that has the opportunity to score a lot of fantasy points. The running back for Indianapolis should be able to score a lot of fantasy points if he could turn into somewhat of a bell cow.
Does the Josh Ferguson, Josh Robinson kind of back-to-back flops scare you there at all?
No, because they're just different players. It's the same as like not drafting Juju Smith, because one, you could either say USC wide receivers have all been flops, or you could say Pittsburgh number 2s recently have all been flops. He's just a different guy, so I don't really follow that narrative street.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I like Marlon Mack. I probably wouldn't go this early on him. I probably would want to wait a few rounds for his kind of uncertainty. Just with it seems like, don't ask me why, but their Turbin looks like he's going to still have those goal line carries. I think he had 6-7 touchdowns last year. So Marlon Mack might have a little bit of a work to do to develop and be able to even take reins in that offense. And it's a good pick. I just would do it maybe a few rounds later.
I just want to say, in our circumstance, I'm looking at other running backs right now that on 99% of dynasty leagues I would rather have over Marlon Mack. But in this little game that we're playing, that I'm going to have to let prospects develop. I would prefer Marlon Mack to those players.
Yeah, I'm always win now, man.
Well, I am too, but you're not going to win now when you're only.
I had to stop myself. I don't know if anyone else saw this. Ryan McDowell ran these catch-22 leagues last year, and my ego is so big, man. I would have done a catch-22 and try to compete in the first year. He basically had to go waiver wire plus rookie picks. I would have been trading all my rookie picks and like saying, "You bastards, I'm going to beat you no matter what." Grab all my guns and fire them off. I'm going to win. And one thing that comes from, just real quick, is that I was really good at redraft. Before my dynasty career, part of the reason I transitioned to dynasty was because I had so much success in redraft that I got bored with it. And my in-season management is pretty good. So I can pick up waivers. I react pretty quickly, read the tea leaves kind of thing. So yeah, I'm always pushing now. I'm not waiting for nobody to develop.
But you're not going to win when you're drafting only players. If you're the Las Vegas Golden Knights, you're not winning in 2018.
All right, now I want to actually, after we do this mock, let's load up these rosters. Let's play, man. I'm calling you out. Let's play it out.
I'm gonna put money. I'm gonna hope that you put money on the Las Vegas Golden Knights to win the Stanley Cup next year.
If Bill Belichick or me was running them, all right. So I think I'm up next, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna go. Again, loading up on wide receivers. I like hitting my prospects. And, something I like about young prospects is that I like to hit them with a little bit. They've shown a little bit of success. So I'm going to go with Nunwa here, 25 years old, starter of the Jets. No reason why he can't produce in that offense that Decker and both Marshall have shown. I don't care who's throwing him the ball. He had 105 targets last year. I think as the clear number one receiving option in that offense, he should easily funnel 125, 150 type targets. Maybe not the most efficient guy you're going to get, but this late in the draft, I think he's got top 24 potential. What
do you think about that, Jesse?
I can't argue with that. I mean, especially now that he's, got nobody else around him to really compete with. Like last year, Marshall was still there and he still was able to put up numbers. So I think that in an expanded role, he's definitely going to keep it going and keep improving.
And who you got at number 11?
Number 11, I am going to go. Got a couple of guys queued up here. I think I'm going to go with James White here. As much as I like to avoid drafting Patriots players in fantasy because it's usually a crapshoot. I think Bill Belichick hates us all. But I mean, the run he had at the end of the year, James White, and the fact that they brought in a couple of banger running backs, I think he's still going to have a role there as a pass catching specialist. And the way New England plays and the way they approach the running back position, I think he's always going to be able to put up some points for me. And he's still only 25, so he's not that old.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Bill Belichick enjoys us losing fantasy football games because of him more than he enjoys winning Super Bowls.
They both come pretty easy to him, so I think maybe that's all it is.
Yeah, I think they go hand in hand.
I'm going to go with. Yeah, you're right. There might be an actual process to that. I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins. He's actually the number 12 quarterback in ADP. So hypothetically, if this league had 12 teams, then maybe one of their teams didn't keep a quarterback. So I would be having the best quarterback available, at least according to ADP. And quarterbacks obviously last longer. So even if this is a bit of an expansion team, I'm getting a guy that's 28 years old, 29 years old, 28 years old, who hopefully can be with his team for a long time and could put up big numbers. We see that the Redskins are focused on giving him weapons, whether it's adding Jamison Crowder late in the draft, whether it's signing Terrell Pryor, who has looked beastly so far, whether it's giving Jordan Reed an extension, whether it's drafting Josh Doxson in the first round. They're spent money on the offensive line, Morgan Moses, obviously giving Trent Williams a big extension, drafting Brandon Scherf in the first round. They just drafted a running back. They're loading him with talent to be successful. So whatever you think of Kirk Cousins, I think that he's going to be a good fantasy quarterback no matter what.
I guess
Kevin, you're up.
Assuming that they don't franchise him again and run him out of town.
Well, they might just franchise him for 42 straight seasons, but either way, he'll be on the team.
Yeah, just real quick with the quarterbacks left on the board: Stafford, Rivers, Wentz, Tyrod Taylor. I'm pretty happy with letting you guys let whatever quarterback falls to me, and while I gobble up as many running backs and receivers as I can, and even starters at tight end.
You're doing that too in a draft that we're in together right now. You're doing that even in a 2 QB league. You drafted your first quarterback in round 10?
I'm not sure which round. I'm in all four mocks, so I get them pretty confused. But I usually take quarterbacks later, depending on how well they're falling. I like to have 2 QB2s with upside at QB1. That's been my general strategy right now for Superflex and 2 QB. But I let them fall a little bit. I generally try to take one by the 8th round. So my favorite running back here is going to be Jonathan Williams. I'll probably be taking him much earlier than this, where it's one player that I put my flag in. I've done a lot of writing on him, did a pretty extensive profile on dynastyfootball.com. Really good runner. Really like the way he squares up shoulders. He'll pound people. Pretty good speed, not great. I think he's a great runner. I think he's in line to succeed McCoy in Buffalo. Now that Gillespie's gone, they didn't actually add anybody behind him really that I'd be worried about. Yeah, I'm big on Jonathan Williams.
I really like that pick. Jesse.
That's the second time Kevin snagged my guy on me right before the pick.
Wow.
I like Williams too. I mean, McCoy, you don't even know how much longer he's going to be there. Williams has got that, clear path to being a starter in a couple of years, and that might be, the steal of the draft right there. I'm going to go with, this is tough now because I was planning on going Williams. I'm going to go with Jamal Williams, the running back they selected. I am actually a Montgomery fan. I think that he's going to have a really good role there in Green Bay this year. But I think they still have enough of a powerful offense that they'll need someone more of a traditional runner style, like a between the tackles kind of guy. And I think Williams is going to fill that role for them. Montgomery is obviously, his receiving chops are well documented, but I think Williams is going to still have a role in that on a good offense. And if we're drafting this team with an eye to the future, then I've got some upside there and some room to grow.
So I'm going to draft somebody with an eye to the future in a different way, because I'm drafting this player with the hopes that I can trade him a couple weeks into the season, and that's Danny Woodhead. I would maybe prefer him to most players that were already drafted. I would prefer him to, I think, Bilal Powell, I think Duke Johnson, and any type of situation where I think I'm competing. Danny Woodhead, if we're talking about PPR formats, he's a beast. Obviously, he's not going to do much for me in 2020, but if I'm an expansion team and I am in week 2 or 3 and Danny Woodhead already has 23 receptions, then I'm calling every team that's short on running backs and seeing what I could get, what future draft pick I can get for Danny Woodhead. Kevin, you're up.
Yeah, I think we're cooking that. I think it's really hard to hold those running backs for ransom. Nobody wants to pay for them, even when they're looking to go. I mean, I got Freeman for a first-round pick even last year. So, I mean, people are really hard on running backs. The value in mature leagues, they devalue running backs big time. They're harder to get anything for them and really flip them. I'm actually going to go with Delaney Walker here. I think he's a starter right off the bat, maybe 1-2 more years left, and he's a real asset you could actually flip. I think you really get some good production out of him early and then flip him and probably have to combine him with something else to get a future second or a younger player in return.
Do you have any concern with Eric Decker maybe taking some of his role there?
No, not really. I think a Walker, different types of receivers. I think the mainstay for Mariota is still going to want to rely on Walker. He'll know where he is and he'll still get his targets. I think Decker really hurts the wide receiver group more than the tight end.
All right, Jesse, well, you're up.
I'm going to go Chris Conley, the wide receiver in KC.
I already had his page brought up so I could talk about his stat. Okay, go ahead. I guess it's only fitting that I get sniped once. Well,
I've been sniped a couple of times. It's only fair. Yeah. I'm not a big Tyreek Hill fan. I mean, I get the appeal, and he's got the playing time, that wide receiver 1 role kind of locked up there. But I don't know that I'm a big believer in what he's going to do. I don't know if he's I don't know what it is about him. I'm just not buying the hype right now, especially at the price he's going. I think Conley's going to slide in as the wide receiver 2 there and still make some plays. He's still only 24 years old. He's a young guy. I think he's got some value there.
All right, I'll go ahead and snag him. I'll go ex-Chief Jeremy Maclin. This is kind of sort of the same type thinking I was with Danny Woodhead, that maybe I can flip him. He's just too good of a talent to be down this far, I think. And, I'm not going to back it up too much. It's Jeremy Maclin, and it's this late. So whether you're getting points this year or next, or whether you could trade him, he's an asset.
Sounds good. Next up, I think I'll go with Carlos Henderson.
Yeah.
I really like him. I liked him pre-draft. I have him ranked pretty high, much higher than consensus. I think that there's something to do with that Broncos offense. Last 2 years, they've targeted wide receiver over 120 times for two receivers. That's a volume sustainable like no other. I think if Sanders or DT ends up going with an injury, Henderson's in line to get a bulk of targets really fast. And in long term, I think he'll be a viable option in that offense. No tight end to speak of.
I think, I mean, with Sanders and Thomas both getting older as well, they've definitely got to start coming up with some contingency plans there. So developing a young guy is definitely high on their priority list.
No doubt. And you're up, right, Jesse, at 20?
I'm up. I'm gonna take my first tight end here. I'm gonna go Jack Doyle, simply because I'm gonna need a tight end, and he's shown the ability to be productive. They re-signed him to that new contract, so they're definitely they believe in him. The new general manager. Actually, I heard that on Kevin's show that the new regime decided to keep him, so that's kind of a good sign for his value.
All right, I'm gonna go Taywan Taylor. I wanted to get really creative here, and not that Taywan Taylor isn't. We talked about Taylor a little bit earlier in the show, so I won't go too deep. But he's a guy that I'm not expecting a lot out of year one. But after Eric Decker's possibly gone, after Rashad Matthews is possibly gone, after who's the tight end you just drafted? Delaney Walker. After he's another year older, I think that Mariota and Taylor could produce some sort of chemistry, and he could be kind of a number 2 or a number 3 option in that offense behind Corey Davis and whoever else they bring in to play that opposite side.
Sounds good. I like it.
All right, who you got, Kevin?
Let's see. Running out of options. We got the old guys still on the board. Gore, Peterson. Yeah. I'm not going after those guys. I'll let somebody else take those guys and try to flip them. That'll be a hard sell. I think I'm going to go with Chad Williams, Arizona. I think I really like Arians. It's kind of a trust in Arians kind of pick. He drafted, I don't know if how many people know, he drafted Emmanuel Sanders, T.Y. Hilton, Antonio Brown, John Brown. He's got a pretty good knack for these late round wide receivers. So I'll take a flyer at this late in the draft, and hopefully Chad Williams can emerge in that offense as Fitzgerald fades away.
All right, and who do you got, Jesse, for your last pick?
I guess I'll fill out my team and go with a quarterback. I'm going to take Carson Wentz. I like the way Philadelphia is trying to surround him with weapons to ensure he's got every opportunity to succeed there. I think they're going to be patient with him, but at the same time, kind of make sure that he's got the opportunity to succeed. So got some good upside. He's still young. I think I'm going to go with Wentz.
Now, would you go with Wentz all the time over Matt Stafford, or just in this hypothetical that we're in this theoretical situation that we're going in?
Theoretically, I'm just going with Wentz based on the way that we're kind of building our teams right now. Stafford, definitely, if I'm building my own full roster, I would prefer him over Wentz. Just he's got that guaranteed value that we talked about earlier.
All right. Well, there's a lot of players here that I could finish on. Jeremy McNichols, I like. Malcolm Mitchell, I think, is being underrated just because of how deep that wide receiver core is in New England right now. But I'm just going to pick somebody that I want to talk about because I'm the host and I could do that. I'm going to go with Adam Shaheen, D2 prospect, going to play tight end for the Bears. I just think he has all the tools to be a good tight end in this league. He's going to take some maturity, some growth in the league, some learning the NFL game. I get all that, but they spent draft capital on him to try to make him into a superstar tight end, and I think that it's possible he reaches that. Now, it might be only 25% that he turns into a starter, but I think if he does turn into that, the sky's the limit at that point. Do either of you have a? I know we're like kind of at the last bit of the show, and I didn't really, get either of you to prepare for Adam Shaheen, but do either of you like him or dislike him for any reason?
I think that Chicago is not going to be a good team this year, so I don't see the harm in them giving him some opportunity, see what he's got. So he'll see some playing time for sure. You'll kind of get the feel for how he's taking in the pro style game, and the sky's the limit, like you said.
Yeah, I think it's a tough call. They're looking for a young tight end. They got Deion Sims, and I think Zach Miller's still there. So early on, it might be a development process for Shaheen, but I think they're looking for somebody that's going to be a younger tight end that they can develop. I mean, look out if Trubisky ever develops and gets a rapport with this young tight end, and then they have Jordan Howard there. If Kevin White can catch on. I mean, they get a lot of budding stars, I think. TBD if it actually ever clicks and comes together. But, it's a hard situation to trust. It's kind of a dark throw. I usually wait for veteran tight ends and not draft rookie tight ends, kind of let them get out there. But it's a dark throw this late, I think.
All right. Well, Kevin, it was great to talk to you. Thanks for coming on again. I think you're one of the true veterans of the Dynasty One podcast.
Thanks, man. I love the show. I go way back listening. I've been an avid listener probably a few years now, at least, going back to when you guys were on DLF doing your show. I really appreciate having on. It's surreal talking with you guys, and look forward to next time.
Oh, well, thanks, man. And everybody check out Kevin's work at DLF. More importantly, as importantly, go check out the Fantasy Football Engineering podcast. Give it a rate and review and subscribe. Something that I haven't been asking for lately. But guys, go subscribe to the Dynasty One podcast and rate and review it. It's important for Kevin. It's important for us. This is the way that people get to hear about our show. It's important that you go do that. Jesse, thank you for doing the co-pilot seat again tonight.
Hey, no problem. Always a pleasure. And Kevin, it was great talking to you, not in person, but voice to voice.
Yeah, sounds good, Jesse. Catch you next time.
All right. Well, everybody go check out Kevin at _FF_engineer. It's bad enough I got to do one underscore with these guys.
Double underscores. I like it.
I put 2 in just for you, man.
Go check out Jesse at DF_Patterson. You can check me out without underscores in my name. It's at Carl Safchik. And then follow the show at Dynasty One Podcast. That's the number 1. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and have a good week. All right, guys. Good show.
Yeah, good stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, great.
All right. Well, I'm going to go get some dinner. I'll talk to y'all soon.
All right, man. Take it easy. Later.
All right.